can't tell if it's on. All right. How you guys doing? It looks like we're live now. This is the Dr. G Show. This is episode 194. So we've been doing this series now for the last few weeks on kind of like health and sanity. Of course you should be sick. Not why, but of course. So, you know, I've finally gotten to that point in my life, or say clinical practice, where you're not like, why anymore. You're just like, yeah, you should feel awful. People will tell me about, you know, what they do and what they eat, what they use, and you're just like, yeah, you should be sick. You should be sick, you should be depressed, falling apart, and you live in a country where 3 out of every 4 Americans is chronically managing a chronic condition. Management. Supplements, medications for the rest of your life, right? So, when you look at, you know, kind of know what I know with all this stuff, it's not a surprise. You know, this is the sickest, fattest, dumbest country with the most anxiety and depression, and it should be. It honestly should be. Most people don't even think that, like, our food changes across the border. Our health changes across the border. But if you go to Europe or a whole bunch of other countries, holy crap, it's a whole different world for you, right? If you go to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, you go from us, where your risk of breast cancer is astronomically high, to 90% less, right? Our heart disease in America, it's 1 in 2. It's extremely high. It hasn't always been that way, but you fly over to Europe, you go live like they do in France, and now it's 70% lower? That doesn't make any sense, right? If it's genetics, if it's destiny, if it's just, you know, you're 35, you're getting older, you should feel awful all the time. That's crazy. Most Americans have no freaking clue how wonderful they can feel and how awful they actually feel. So, we just kind of live in what's called Skinner's box, which is just getting used to feeling uncomfortable and horrible and anxious and depressed and chronically sick and painful all the time. Murika, right? So this series we dedicated to talking about some of these details, right? So kind of like lending you guys some perspective from where I come from with this. And, you know, at the end we should be like, yeah, okay, you should be sick. So, we talked the last few weeks about drinks and ingredients in there, and then also some substitutions people could make, like healthier choices. So, we want to talk a little bit about food now. And with food, we'll talk a little bit about pesticides, herbicides, which will be fun. It's going to be disturbing. And then we'll talk more about like chemicals and stress and other stuff as we go along. And then, of course, you know, it's not rocket science, right? I have 4 postdoctoral diplomates, a couple degrees, I don't know, $200,000 education, and, you know, it all summates to, oh, crap, we're just causing all these problems. Like, that's the easiest, cheapest fix, is just teach people to stop causing the problems. So let's go through some ingredients and look at some stuff. And if you guys have some ideas and you guys want to know about some stuff, post it, right? Hopefully I'll know the answer right away, but if not, we'll look at them. We'll do some fun stuff, okay? I always like workshops when we do reading food labels. It's pretty eye-opening. Like, just people are not aware of how toxic everything is. So let's look at something fun like Cheetos. I grew up on Cheetos, right? Never really thought much about Cheetos, right? You know, it's just tastes good, it's fine. So the first ingredient in there is enriched cornmeal. And it's enriched with just some vitamins and minerals. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minerals and vitamins enriched, okay? So now it's healthy. But the reason they have to enrich it is because they destroy all the nutrients out of there. So if you look at a book called Twinkie Deconstructed, that's a really great book. But it talks about how this plant is 5,280 feet, about a mile, that makes bread. And what they do is they take nutritious, healthy fats and vitamins and minerals in this grain and they strip everything out. Then people get sick. No problem. We'll just put synthetic ones back in, right? They take out the naturally occurring ones, put synthetic ones back in, and that's supposed to make it all better for us, right? So our American bread would get you 15 years in prison and $500,000 fine in places like Singapore because it disrupts your thyroid, right? So when we look at enriched, most people look at that and be like, ooh, that's really good. And then I look at it and go, holy crap, they destroyed all the nutrients, so now they're putting crap back in there to try to make you feel better, right? Kind of like natural. Natural, it's not a good term for the most part. So enriched cornmeal. So that corn is genetically modified corn. And when we look at why they use genetically modified, it's so they can spray a chemical on there that will kill every living thing except for that corn, right? Even when you look at BT corn, all right, that's the first kind of time we mess with this, and that's the first place we saw autism start. I believe the girl was Alexandria, and she was next to where they were testing BT corn. In other countries where they don't vaccinate, you see clusters of autism start to spring up. But it's only after they started doing genetically modified BT corn. So we see those clusters. And then those clusters are surrounded by those areas where they're doing that. And then you're like, oh, well, of course, right? Because at MIT University, they did this study and published it about how GMOs cause autism, right? And what it does is that glyphosate that they use that kills everything disrupts a pathway. Now the problem with this is we share the same pathways. Most people do not know, and they didn't teach us this in grad school, but your DNA makes kind of everything. You can make a horn like a goat, you can make web fingers and toes like a duck, right? You can swim faster, win a couple competitions, but we have the ability to make every other species. So almost all your DNA is turned off, and then the last little bit makes humans, right? So even tails. People are born with an actual tail. That's why we have a tailbone. Because in utero, you have, pretty much everybody has a tail, and then if it says this is a human, it'll resolve, and then you don't have a tail, you just have a tailbone. Where does it tell? I don't know, right? Tattletale? I don't know. So anyways, if we use chemicals that disrupt those processes, then we end up with these mutations. And then people are like, oh, my kid is part cat and human. Oh, that's really good. In India, they actually leave the tails on. So you can see pictures of this on Google. So that's awesome. Which I gotta say, honestly, I mean, if your kid's born with a tail, right? Let's say you just eat a bunch of genetically modified food while you're pregnant. Your kid doesn't dissolve the tail. Now the tail is just wagging back and forth real nice. You know the conversation's going really well. But if just that tip is flicking, you're about to get in trouble right there, right? So that would be wonderful. The kids end up in those teenage years. You have no idea what's going on. They're dead eyes, just hating all your conversations, waiting to get back to YouTube or Facebook or TikTok, and just like, how long do I have to listen to this stuff before I can just get back to my phone? But you can tell with their tail. See, all right. I think it might be a good thing. So then, MIT says that we have an octopamine pathway, and I believe it's through tyrosine. Tyrosine then goes and makes octopamine. Octopamine is then used by your body for behavior and emotional responses. Guess what happens with autistic kids? Problems with behaviors and social responses. So, we literally directly cause things like autism, right? So, same thing you see with like amalgam fillings and sugar, which we'll talk maybe about that next time. The one pattern goes up, the next pattern follows. And then all of a sudden you're like, why do we have this sudden epidemic of Alzheimer's? It can't be the thing that increased right with it. That's crazy talk. It's probably just a new genetic thing that suddenly becomes an epidemic, right? So we are talking about predictability with this stuff. So when you look at that genetically modified corn, the whole thing is so we can spray a poison that messes up bugs and plants for which you share the same biological pathways. So you mess yourself up too. And as long as you're healing faster than you're messing up, you're probably going to be okay. The minute you are not healing as fast as you're mutating things, then you get cancer. Then you get mutations. Then you get problems. So, outside of the enrichment of that, you got full ferrous sulfide, which is iron, which can make you constipated, niacin and thiamine and riboflavin and folic acid, so some B vitamins. But they're not B vitamins that naturally occur. They're ones that we created from genetically modified butt bacteria. So to help get nutrients back in the genetically modified grain, we're going to use genetically modified butt bacteria to make the B vitamins to put in there. So obviously these are all wonderful, wonderful ideas. The next thing is you got vegetable oil. And so they got 3 different ones here. So vegetable oil typically is not a good idea. But corn, so we take our corn and then we use genetically modified corn oil on there, which again has the potential to disrupt that physiology, but also the oil of corn is highly inflammatory. So that 1 to 1 to 1 to 2 omega-3 to omega-6 balance, so we don't have chronic inflammatory problems. Well, we're just going to put a whole bunch of omega-6s in there, which the number one outcome when they process through this COX-2 enzyme and make prostaglandins is they increase pain and inflammation. So those Cheetos should cause chronic knee pain, chronic headaches, chronic back pain, right? And then the second thing is it actually should increase your blood pressure, it should cause arrhythmias, and it can even cause heart attack and stroke. So, and again, people don't understand. It's worth it. I mean, that's cheaper oil. Someone's going to make more profit. The other one is canola on here, right? So canola, what the hell is canola? So canola is originally rape oil. So I know everybody thinks like, I just want a lot of rape oil in my chips, right? If the only, I don't think this is good jokes. This is terrible, terrible. All right, so you have rape oil, which is made from rape seeds. So that rape oil had an acid in there that would actually increase people's likelihood to have heart attacks and strokes. In a country where heart attacks and strokes went like this, so we could fix that. So we made genetically modified rape seeds so we could make low acid Canadian oil, or canola, Canadian low acid. So canola means Canadian low acid. It means genetically modified rape oil. But then people wouldn't buy the rape oil. So now they have organic, hybrid, low acid rape oil for you. So inflammatory corn, genetically modified corn oil, genetically modified rape oil, and then sunflower oil from sunflower seeds. Probably not too bad, but also that's probably okay. So then we have cheese seasoning, right? Not cheese, cheese seasoning. The hell is cheese seasoning? Sounds like a little Frankenstein experiment, and that's what it is. So the first thing that we use to make our cheese seasoning is whey. Now, whey is the byproduct that we used to throw away from cheese manufacturing, and then we started selling it as whey protein. People had a bunch of allergies to that people switched to green proteins, but they still use whey protein in lots of food. Whey protein should cause lots and lots of autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions, from migraines to irritable bowel to Crohn's to eczema, psoriasis to seasonal allergies, right? Lots of allergies. So whey protein is a pretty big allergen for that. Then it has cheddar cheese in there, which I don't know if you guys know this, but cheddar cheese is not real. We color it to make it look like that. So it has milk in there, and of course milk has whey and casein, the two most common allergens. So we test all these patients all these years, and we end up with whey and casein as the most common allergens for chronic inflammatory and autoimmune conditions. So if you have a chronic inflammatory condition or autoimmune condition and you eat Cheetos or anything with dairy, you should be like, yeah, I should feel horrible today. My rheumatoid should be all flared up because I got the dairy. So there's milk, and then there's cheese cultures. Well, that's pretty good. That's fermented. And then salt, which again is probably not real sea salt. And then enzymes, which is what they use to curdle the milk. So basically a little fermented milk. Now what's interesting in here is that doesn't account why it's yellow. And you know, like when you buy shredded cheese now, it has nattokinase, or sorry, has an antibiotic and a natomycin in there, which is great. So it disrupts your bacteria, but the cheese doesn't mold. More profit. Your gut's worth that to them. And then it has more canola oil in there, so that's more genetically modified rapeseed. And then we have maltodextrin, which is malto is sugar plus sugar, and dextrin is sugar. So sugar plus sugar plus sugar is maltodextrin. Now, maltodextrin is derived from corn. It even says it on the label. So more genetically modified Frankenstein ingredients there. And then we have natural flavors. That sounds pretty good, but MSG is a natural flavor. Let's see if they'll be bold enough to put that straight on there. So natural flavors, who knows what the hell that is, right? That can be synthetic plus natural. That can just be actually normal, healthy stuff, right? But then it has artificial flavors. And like we said last time, artificial flavors are when you take petroleum, you make gasoline, you have the waste product called coal tar, which causes cancer and leukemia, and then you can extract that and make artificial flavors. So then we can make things 1,200% more profitable by making cancer-causing coal tar become Cheetos flavor. Then they have salt, again, that's okay. And then more whey protein concentrates, so again, lots more allergens. And then straight up monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate. So monosodium glutamate, or MSG, is, I guess MIT did another study on that, and it said that it causes instant brain cell death the minute it crosses the blood-brain barrier. See that? Instant brain cell death, right? Now, what was that memory? Crap, the MSG took it away, right? So, let alone there's a Chinese study that came out on artificial colors and flavors, and that one said that MSG decreases brain neurite growth by 8,000%. So that MSG that makes those Cheetos taste more flavorful is not only shrinking your brain, but is preventing you from growing more brain to replace the brain that you shrunk. So when we talk about Americans, by the time they become overweight, they have 4% smaller brains. By the time they become obese, they have 8% smaller brains. It's not why. It's, yeah, that's what should happen. Horribly neurotoxic stuff, right? But if we add MSG, we can sell more product because it is brain addiction. In the book of Dr. Kessler with the End of Overeating, he talks about a study where the manipulation of salt, sugar, fat, and MSG can change the biological survival mechanisms, right? So that's how addiction works with this kind of stuff. So you can sell more food, you have to create an addiction in the brain, right? So with MSG, if you feed people that, it will make them eat things that make them feel awful, right? So your survival is, if I touch a hot plate, or I touch the stove and the burner's on, I burn my hand, I'm not going to do it again. Now, if you live in the deep, deep South, maybe 3 or 4 times, right? But most of us, we're not going to touch the hot stove again, right? That's survival. But studies show that if you get people addicted, they will then choose foods that make them violently sick, bloated, feel horrible, depressed, and they will crave more of those foods, which is horrible. Horrible. People will eat things, feel worse, and just crave more to feel worse. It bypasses that whole part of your body that says, hey, when I eat pizza, it makes me feel bloated and sick. I'm just not going to eat that anymore, right? But you have to, because the dairy's morphine, the wheat's morphine, the MSG in the pepperonis, that's morphine. Sorry, it's actually it is morphine. It's MSG. So you should eat that and feel sick and want more. Now the lactic acid in there, citric acid, we talked about that before, is made from black mold, which is deadly, but there's no black mold in it by that time. Now the artificial color in there is color number 6, yellow 6. And of course that same study that talked about MSG decreasing brain neurite growth by 8,000% shows that yellow food coloring decreases brain neurite growth by 3,000%. 3,000. So what is that? That's 11,000% already. And it has salt again. Alright, so GMO inflammatory corn with GMO inflammatory corn with GMO inflammatory corn with GMO inflammatory canola and sunflower oil. Highly inflammatory autoimmune disease causing whey, cheddar, which is the same, milk, which is the same, cheese culture, which is the same. Then we have genetically modified inflammatory canola again, and then we have genetically modified corn again, and then we have artificial flavors, which are from coal tar, and then we have whey protein, which is highly allergenic and inflammatory. Then we have MSG, which is neurotoxic, and then we have lactic acid, citric acid, and then we have neurotoxic artificial color number 6, and then some salt. So, knowing that, should people be shrinking their brains and getting dumber because they eat that food? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely. So, you're not going to get perfect in this world, especially in the U.S., right? We can't all just travel to Europe and spend a few weeks there, right? Where this food is often banned. So we have to start to understand what we're doing to cause our children to have all these problems, to cause all of us to have all these problems. Now let's look at something like hot dogs. So, wait a second. Oh, here we go. All right, so with hot dogs, research came out several years ago, and it says that children that eat processed meat are more than 12 servings of processed meat in a month. Only 12. There are astronomically higher rates of leukemia and lymphoma, so blood cancers, right? But all cancers. So one of the big things of that is nitrates, and if you don't know, the World Health Organization said that nitrates in processed meat is now more likely to cause cancer than smoking cigarettes. So your kids are better off smoking cigarettes than to eat processed meat in America. Lunchables, the bologna, the hot dogs, the deli meat, it's all full of nitrates. Now, recently, they said, well, we'll just stop saying we have nitrates and we'll just say we have celery juice. So you'll see, because it's so toxic and people become aware of it, you'll see the ingredients that say we have no nitrates, except those that naturally occur from celery juice, right? So then people think, oh, they're just putting celery juice in there. How bad could that be? It's not celery juice. It's concentrated celery juice, concentrating that celery juice into concentrated nitrates, which then increase your risk of heart cancer and leukemia, lymphoma, and all that. But now it just sounds nicer. So let's look at some of these ingredients. There's ascorbic acid in there, synthetic vitamin C. At least that seems like it would be a good thing, and that's an antioxidant in there. But then we have autolyzed yeast extract. Now, autolyzed yeast extract is just another name for MSG. And so that gives it a savory, umami kind of flavor, which we like with our meat, but it actually decreases your brain neurite growth by 8,000% and causes instant brain cell death. So if you eat more hot dogs, you become dumber. And there's beef in there. Well, at least that's something real, right? Except the beef is from CAFOs or concentrated farms where they feed the animals corn, right? That corn causes a bacterial overgrowth called E. coli 0157H7, and that kills children every year in America. So then our solution, so we can feed cows corn and not kill everybody, is now about, I don't know, 85% of the meat is washed with toxic ammonia. So literally, right? Ammonia. So you can make cheaper meat and kill less kids. So the I don't know, that's so bad. So the beef then is corn fed, so it's highly inflammatory, which means you should have more joint pain, more headaches, more back pain, more aches, more pains, more arthritis. So inflammatory meat should cause that. Oh yeah, and then of course high blood pressure, arrhythmias, and heart attacks and strokes. So if you don't get the cancer right away, you can get the heart attack and stroke. And then it has beef stock, which again, which by the way, isn't real beef. Like someone did a little microscopic test on this, and you can see little hairs and little fragments of bone, and it's just hot dogs are the garbage that we can't sell, kind of like gelatin. Gelatin's all the carcass and stuff that's left over too. So then we have beef stock, and beef stock is made from boiling inflammatory corn-fed bones. So, and then we have cherry powder, which again, that actually seems pretty good. And then we have collagen casing and citric acid. Citric acid, yeah, sure, it comes from. Now I love this. So on the ingredients it says citric acid, a naturally occurring acid in citrus fruits and tomatoes, commonly used to control the acidity of the byproducts. And I cannot tell you how many times I see this where it's just like, well, benzene is naturally occurring in fruit degradation. Okay, is that what you're using? No, you're using coal tar created into those products, right? So citric acid, they're not using citric acid from fruit for this. They're using citric acid that's in a powder that's in a plastic container that they bought from China from genetically modified black mold. And then the collagen casing, so people don't want to eat the intestines because that's crazy. That seems disgusting. So instead, we're going to use collagen casing, which is created from beef proteins. So we're grinding up carcasses and then making the casing out of that. So it's inflammatory. Then dextrose. Now dextrose, just like we said before, is made from genetically modified corn, right? So even in the ingredients on this website, they're like, dextrose is a sugar that's naturally occurring in fruits and honey, and which can also be derived from corn. It's from corn. So I like when they give it, it could be this wonderful benign thing, or it could be this awful thing. It's the awful thing. So dextrose is genetically modified corn, which again uses glyphosate, which then causes things like autism and disruption of gut flora and all that stuff. So it makes you fatter. Then we have flavoring, and that's a whole thing. Like, what the hell's that? So it's a bunch of extracts and other stuff, but again, probably talking more of MSG kind of stuff. There's lactate in there and diacetic, and those are to help control bacterial during the fermentation. They're like it's a form of vinegar, but they kill it, so it's not alive, you know. But that helps to control the acidity of it, which, you know, it's dairy, so it's horribly allergenic, and that can cause a lot of problems for people. Then there's lauric alginate. Now, alginate, you might know, is made from. So, you know, this one's different. So, this alginate's from palm oil. Interesting. And from ethanol, which is alcohol. So, that's not too shabby there. Then we have maltodextrin, which we said before is sugar plus sugar plus sugar, all from genetically modified corn. So inflammatory genetically modified corn. Then mechanically separated chicken and turkey, and of course beef, and that's a whole thing, right? So I'm just grinding stuff up. Then we have modified food starch. So modified food starch is genetically modified corn, which is horribly inflammatory and causes heart disease, arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats, pain, all kinds of stuff. Then straight up MSG. So we have MSG already that in the yeast extract, which then causes you to become dumber. But we just throw an MSG in there in addition, so that way it's even more neurotoxic for you. So that's great. And then they have some paprika, which, holy crap, finally something like decent. And then they have phosphates in there, and that enhances the juiciness, but you can have problems with phosphates for sure. The pork that's in there is fed corn, which is genetically modified, highly inflammatory. So then that that pork that's in there is going to be increasing pain, inflammation, and hypertension, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeats, clots, heart attack, stroke. Yeah. Then they have salt in there, and then they have smoke flavoring. Now, smoke flavoring is typically made from coal tar. So we can take cancer-causing coal tar. So when we did our talk the other day, maybe a few weeks ago, we read from that textbook from 1907, and it talks about this in there. And we still do this today, all right? So that coal tar dramatically increases the risk of cancer. And then we have sodium nitrates. Now, I had a patient once, I was telling them about how bad nitrates are, and they're like, well, that was my job at Tyson, right? And I just hated the job because you got to make a little line of nitrates. If you put too much in, you're going to kill everybody right away. If you don't put enough in, you're going to kill people right away. So that job sucks. So nitrates is one of the main reasons why these processed meats are more likely to cause cancer than smoking cigarettes, especially in children. If you can cause cancer in children, that's an amazing feat for America, right? Used to it'd be like, well, you know, everybody gets so old, eventually they get cancer. But we can cause it in children now with processed meat. So, I think we're doing pretty good at this, America. Then we have sorbitol, and sorbitol often will cause, any of those kind of sugar alcohols will cause people to have gut problems. So this might increase people's IBS and Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, even eczema, psoriasis. Now there's soy protein concentrate. A couple things about this is, one, soy is genetically modified. Two, the pesticide that they use on soy is just banned from the EPA, but the EPA said this is so deadly we're going to ban it. But if you still have stuff on hand, go ahead and use it. It's fine. Don't even worry about all that, right? So then you get that stuff. Let alone, my patient today was talking about that the chemical extraction for soy is uses hexane gas. And that hexane ends up in your soy, and it's horribly toxic. And he said now they're seeing products that say no hexane used. So they were like, oh, hexane's not a problem. Sure, it causes leukemia and lymphoma and cancer, but hey, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. And then now they're like, hey man, we don't use any of that toxic stuff. That's what I love, right? I love when Clorox came out with hydrogen peroxide bleach alternative, and their claim was it's less toxic, or it's the same cleaning powder without the toxicity. So we could have been using the same quality without causing cancer and disease, but now you're just going to tell us this is crazy. And then we have spices. And spices, probably good stuff. That should be good. All medicine. And then this sugar and corn syrup, because of course we're Americans, we can't have meat without sugar in there. That's crazy talk. So of course the sugar is from genetically modified sugar beets from places like South Dakota. And then the corn syrup is genetically modified corn, and that of course causes things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So like we said when we were talking about the drinks, you'll see that high fructose corn syrup causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We can now do in 10 years of eating what it used to take 35 years of hardcore alcoholics to do to their liver. And then it has water. Hey, that's pretty good, except for that water is chloridated, which disrupts your thyroid, fluoridated, which messes up your thyroid, and probably bromine in there, which messes up your thyroid. And then, to wrap it all together, why not throw some more MSG in there, which is 8,000 times neurotoxic, and we'll call it yeast extract. So we got 3 to 4 different types of MSG in here. So that's pretty awesome. Now, the one thing that they did not have included in here is often you'll see that they add oh shoot, I talk about this all the time. So to glue the meat together, they will use tissue transglutaminase derived from pig's blood, and that tissue transglutaminase will make it more solid, but it's going to mess up people with any kind of like wheat allergies or gluten allergies, let alone celiac patients. And so nobody's going to think of a hot dog as bread, but we said it already has wheat ingredients in there, but also that what did I say? Tissue transglutaminase. That'll mess people up. So that can cause a migraine. That can cause eczema, psoriasis. That can cause irritable bowel. That can cause Crohn's. It's a pretty messed up chemical that we add. So now looking at like hot dogs, it's funny because at the end of this page it says how horrible all this stuff is, and then it said looking for a hot dog recipe. That's the American way. Like, oh my God, this stuff is gonna kill you and your children. So, can I get that in barbecue? Wonderful. Murika, right? So, when those studies came out and they said that children that consume more than 12 servings, so 12 servings in a month, right? That's like 3 meals a day times 4 days. That's 12 servings. Just 4 days worth of processed meat. But that is more likely to cause your kid to have cancer, you to have cancer, than if you smoked cigarettes. So, we talked about all the inflammatory stuff, right? Well, why does 1 in 2 people have heart attacks and strokes? They should. Why does 3 out of 4 have chronic inflammatory conditions? They should, right? So let's talk a little bit about pesticides. So there's this great website, which I love, called whatsonmyfood.org. Now, in here, you can pick different foods. I'll show you what it looks like here. So you can pick different foods and then watch. So let's look at cilantro. Cilantro is one that they don't include on the Dirty Dozens in the Clean 15. But this is from the USDA and their report on how many pesticides are on the food by the time it gets to the store. So this is after they wash it a whole bunch, right? But look at this. There's 68 pesticides on that non-genetically modified, on that non-organic cilantro, 9 of them are known to cause cancer. 30 mess up your hormones. 30. Why do you have infertility? You should. Why do you have prostate problems? You should. Why are you growing man boobs? You should. Why do you have breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer? Yeah, you should. 30. And then 12 of them mess up your brain and neurotransmitters. 12 of them messes up your reproductive system. So you can look up each one of these. Why not have a little bit of DDT? That's messed up. I said it was banned for a while. It's in DDE. But these list all those and then how they're toxic, like what the research shows for those. Look at that. 68 pesticides on that food. 68. So I love cilantro, but you better get some organic cilantro that doesn't have that. Otherwise, why do I have cancer? Yeah, you should have cilantro cancer, cilantro hormone problems, cilantro brain problems, cilantro reproductive problems, right? So then, what if we look at something like apples, right? So apples is pretty common. Most of you guys probably know it's one of the worst ones. But this is a non-organic apple, pesticide residues found by the USDA Pesticide Data Program. So there's about 200 pesticides that they spray on apples during their life cycle. 47 of them are left when you get to the store. 6 of them are known to cause cancer. 16 mess up your hormones. 5 mess up your brain and nervous system. So think like neuropathies, right? 6 of them mess up your reproductive system. So we should add cilantro to our apples and make a little salad here. What other one? You guys want to see? What about? Now, avocado is an interesting one. Avocado, you'll see, it has 1 pesticide, but no toxicity. None. Doesn't kill anything. That's because it's what's called a therin. So it's a derivative of permethrin. And permethrin is the essential oil from chrysanthemum flowers. What about, you think applesauce is any different? Oh shit, look at that. So applesauce has 28 pesticides. I mean, think about this. Everybody's feeding this to their babies, right? 4 causes cancer, 10 mess up your hormones, 8 mess up your nervous system, and 5 mess up your reproductive system. 10 of those kill honeybees. So just think, you go from 46 in an apple, or 47, to 28 in sauce. What about the juice? You guys think it's more or less? Let's see what we got. 13 in juice. Hey, that's a lot better, right? Only 4 causes cancer, only 5 mess up the hormones, only 3 mess up the nervous system, and only 3 mess up the reproductive system. So think about that. You feed your kids apple juice, apple sauce, straight up apples. What about apple single servings? What's that about? Just a little bit more. So that's like at what you get at McDonald's right there. What about baby applesauce? 19. Okay, so baby foods applesauce, 2 causes cancer, 6. Oh, you know what? They just straight up put known on this one. 6 mess up your reproductive system, or your hormones. 1 for brain, 2 for reproductive. Let's see, what else? What about beef? Beef's a meat. I haven't looked up beef yet. Alright, so beef would have 6 pesticides on it. So 1 causes cancer, 2 messes up your hormones. No neurotoxic. Hey, that's pretty good. If you have neuropathies, you're fine with that, right? And then 2 mess up your reproductive system. Let's see. Beef fat, canned beef. Don't be eating that. That sounds horrible. What about butter? Whoa, butter has 19 pesticides on there. 5 cause cancer, 10 mess up your hormones. 10 mess up your hormones. So you should saute the cilantro in there, and then you would have 40 hormone disruptors. 2 mess up your brain, 5 mess up your reproductive system. What about tomatoes? Tomatoes are a pretty common one there. Oh, wait, that's great. What about grape juice? 13 pesticides. 13. What about corn syrup? So a lot of those ingredients we talked about have corn syrup in there. Corn syrup's got 0. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Let's look at corn. That's probably because of the way they process that stuff out. Corn's not even on here. Am I spelling it right? There's no corn on here? Oh, they don't even want to tell you what's cool. That's crazy that it's not on there. What about potatoes? I heard they're pretty bad. Alright, so potatoes, 35. 35 pesticides found on potatoes. 6 cause cancer, 12 mess up your hormones, 7 mess up your brain and nervous system, 6 mess up your reproductive system. So let's see a couple more and then we'll go on here. What about wheat? Wheat grain, 4 pesticides. Huh. Well, that's interesting. No toxicity. Huh. Kills bees. I would have thought there'd be a lot more. That seems sketchy. What about tangerines? Tangerines? 14 pesticides on there. Yeah, I found corn here. Sweet corn. Fresh sweet corn. 3 pesticides? Well, this doesn't even show the glyphosate on there. Messes up your brain and your hormones. What do you guys think? What about last one? Rice. Wait. So rice has 15 pesticides, 4 cause cancer, 10 mess up your hormones, 2 mess up your nervous system, 3 mess up your reproductive system. So, god dang. So if you had like rice, potatoes, and cilantro, that's 50 hormone disrupting pesticides. Alright, and we're going to look at what? Soybean. Soybean has a grain. Soybean is 14 pesticides. 2 causing cancer, 4 messing up your hormones, 2 messing up your nervous system, 3 messing up your reproductive system. And look, here's our glyphosate. 90% of them had 90% of the soybeans had Roundup on it. But there's another one here. I want to see if there's the one that got banned. Floridone. Nope, I don't see it. So they're not including that one. They may not even be testing for all of them. Probably just pick and choose what they're testing for. Okay, so back to me. Alright, you guys. So can you start to see the picture, right? Can you start to see, like, yeah, you should be suffering, right? I mean, when they do Clean 15, what the hell's clean? Clean's 11 pesticides. Clean is 11 pesticides. So, horribly toxic. Horribly toxic. So, you know, it's not about being perfect with all this, but we want to be able to figure out these things and reduce them. So then we can make kind of toxicity decisions on how much risk of cancer and heart disease and diabetes and mutations do we want for our children and for ourselves? You know, kind of messed up. Pretty messed up. All right, well, let's wrap this up. I always feel like there's going to be a lot more stuff we talk about, but man, there's just so much crap. So, this is episode 194, so next time we'll talk about some more food for episode 195, and then we'll get into some other interesting stuff too. So, when we start to think about this stuff, as you watch the last few episodes, I know you guys watch this offline too, when you hear people talk about their illness, don't ask why, but say, shouldn't you have that? Shouldn't you? Like, isn't that the natural outcome for what's going on? And it is. It really is. People are chronically sick and dying prematurely based on what their current doctor doesn't know. That's usually about health and wellness, right? So anything that people have chronically going on is something they're chronically doing to cause it, whether they know it or not. It's what they eat, drink, breathe, rub on their skin, and how they stress. All things we have the greatest control over. But in America, we're the sickest, fattest, dumbest population with the most anxiety, the most depression. We are the absolute best at doing the worst. But there's only two things that prevent us from getting sick: ignorance and complacency. We don't know what we're doing, or we don't care. So the not knowing, hopefully this is going to start shedding light on that and start empowering people to make better changes as we go along. So again, don't worry about perfect. It's what's the next best thing, right? Process over perfection. That's the only way you're going to get through all this stuff, because it's all a gigantic mess out there. So, all right, lots of good stuff. I really thank you guys for joining. I didn't see anybody comment this time for the first time. I don't know if I messed up or not, but otherwise, bye you guys.